Today we're going to make the spectrophotometer, and we're going to need all this equipment here. Looks like it's going to be really complicated, but it's really not that bad. Just got to have a lot of stuff. Alright, so here we go. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is make sure I have all the stuff that I need. I need a cable, I need a light, I need a sensor, a resistor, 2 caps, the actual spectrophotometer housing, and you don't need this yet, but you will eventually, the lid. First I'm going to get the USB cable ready to go. I'm going to use this pair of wire strippers. The biggest hole is the one that you want to use, this bottom one right here. And what you want to do is to take off about 3 inches, and I'm going to close it all the way, then let go just a little bit, and then just pull it off. Okay, and that exposes all this stuff. So you're going to take all this stuff and you're going to have to undo it and twist it off and get it down to the point where you can see all the wires inside. There are 4 wires. You have a white, a green, a black, and a red. You only want the red and the black. The white and the green and all the stranded stuff can get cut off. And that's the perfect time to use one of these really nice sharp pliers. Only use these for small wires. Never try to use these to cut anything big. Okay, there it is, cut off. Now the next step is to take the black wire and to cut it all the way down so there's only an inch, like that. And then I'm going to take these wire strippers. I'm going to strip off just a little bit, about like that. Meanwhile, while over in hot glue land, you can have another member of your group getting these caps ready. Okay, so we're going to take the sensor and we're going to poke it down inside the holes of the cap here. So there it is, like this. I'm going to do the same thing to the light. Voila. Now I don't want these to be able to move around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push them up so I can still get the hot glue gun down inside there, and I'm going to put a couple drops of hot glue, and then I'm going to pull the light down inside the glue. Okay, so it's inside the little basket there that holds the glue. You don't want to put so much glue that the glue goes on top of the light. You just want it to surround around it so it can't wiggle anymore. So I'm going to push it back up, and then I'm going to put a little bit of hot glue in there. Okay, so now I'm pulling it down inside the glue. If you look at it, there's glue on the sides, but not on the actual light. And we just need to make sure we set that so it won't wiggle while the glue is hardening. Next, we're going to do the exact same thing to this one. We'll push it up, put glue underneath, and pull it down in. So I'm going to pull it down in until the glue starts wanting to come up and around, but then stop. Okay, so here it is. So it's going to be held in place just like that. It takes a while for hot glue to dry, so make sure you hold it steady so it doesn't wiggle around and become unglued before it hardens. Now that the glue is hardened on these, I'm going to attach them to the actual housing. Okay, I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on the outside lip like this, and then I'm going to push the light into one side. Be careful, it is hot glue. So you can use the edge of the table and push down on the edge of the table to push on it so you don't burn yourself. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. Okay. Be careful about wiggling these wires a lot, because if you just wiggle them back and forth a lot, eventually they will fatigue and just break off. I have a fix for that, but we'll do that later. Okay, now back over to soldering. This is a piece of solder. Now solder has lead in it and all sorts of other nasty stuff, so you want to make sure you're in a well ventilated area. You need to make sure you have safety glasses on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put some solder on this wire that I cut and stripped earlier. And I'm already holding it with this hand, and I have the soldering iron in this hand, and so I don't have another hand to hold the solder. So that's why I've coiled it and have it right here ready to go. It's a little trick. You want the tip to be shiny. Alright, so you can wipe it on a sponge, or you can wipe it on one of these wires. Copper mesh pads right here, and as long as it's nice and shiny, you're good to go. If it's not shiny and you can't get it shiny, let me know and I'll come help you out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the wire on top of my soldering iron so that it gets hot, and then I'm going to come in and just let the solder melt and flow onto it. So it just created a puddle that just got soaked into it. Okay, and all that smoke that went up, that's the stuff you don't want to breathe that. Okay, now I'm going to take this resistor and I'm going to cut it down so I only have about 1 centimeter on each side of the resistor. Okay, it's pretty tiny now. Okay, can you see it? Anyway, it's small. All right, and you have a measuring device up here at the top. So, all right, so I'm going to do the same thing to this. I'm going to get a little bit of solder on there by having it melt just a little bit on there. You don't need a ton, and so you can see there's just a little bit on the tip right here. All right, now again, I run into a problem where I want to connect those two together. And now I can hold them together, but then I need another hand to come in and solder it. I can't do that with only 2 hands, so I'm going to use another little trick. If you have a nice rubber mat like this, silicone mat, that can withstand the high temperatures, I'm going to tape that resistor down. And I'm going to zoom in so you can see what I'm doing here. Alright, so here's what's going to happen. I'm going to make sure I have a clean tip. I'm going to put just a little bit of solder on it. And then I'm going to come in here, line those two up so they're perfectly in line. I'm going to try to make sure I'm heating up both of them. They'll become liquid. Take away the soldering iron. Keep them together while that solidifies. It takes about 3 seconds. And then they'll be together. Voila, there it is. So it's a little bit of a tricky thing if you've never done it, but the trick is to keep those two lined up while the solder is solidifying. Don't leave the soldering iron on there too long. You don't want to overheat the solder because it has flux in it, and that flux is keeping the oxidation away. So as long as the two are connected, then we're good to go, and you can give it a little tug and make sure it's good. If it breaks off, then you try it again. If the whole wire breaks off because you're just too strong, then we can cut the whole thing off and start over. All right. Anyway, the next step is to cut the red wire so that the two are the same length. Okay, right there, the two are the same length. And then I'm going to strip off just a little bit of the red. And boom. Both of those are stripped, ready to go. Now I'm going to pre-solder these. Again, I clean off the tip on the sponge. I'm going to bring it in and put everything kind of touching each other and touch the solder and just let it soak into the wire. Okay, I got a little too hot because the plastic actually started to melt there. You can see how it's bulging up. And then here's this one, just a little bit on there. Okay, and you're going to put solder on the light. Okay, you have one side will have longer wires that are a lot more flexible. Don't do that one. Do the one where the wires are a lot more rigid. You can bend them apart from each other a little bit, but don't bend them a lot, because if you sit there and bend them back and forth, they're just going to snap off. So we're going to put a little bit of solder on these too. Do the same trick by cleaning off the tip, and then bring everything in here and just melt a little bit and just spread it onto your light. Melt a little bit and just swipe it on there. Now before I connect anything together here on out, I want to make sure I have some of this heat shrink tubing. I got this from Harbor Freight. It's a 3/16 size. I wish it was a little bit bigger, but this works. Alright, so I'm going to cut off about 3 inches. And then we're going to take this and we're going to feed it onto our USB cable. Voila, now we have this, the resistor pre-soldered, the red wire pre-soldered, and we have these pre-soldered. Now if you look carefully, one is longer than the other. The longer one gets the red wire and the shorter one gets the black wire. The resistor on the black goes to the short lead. The red one goes to the long one. Okay? Alright. If you're not sure which one's short, which one's long, you can do a pre-test. We can plug it in. I'll plug it in. The red light in there. Kind of hard to see down in there. There's a red light. So I know I got the right ones. If you have it in the wrong place, you won't get any light. I'm cleaning off the soldering iron. I put a little bit of extra solder on it. And then I line up the resistor right next to the short lead. And I'm going to heat them up, take away the soldering iron, and hold it in place until it's solid. Okay? And then I'm going to position it so I can do the same thing with the red one. And I still have it plugged in, so you might be able to see the red light turning on there. Alright, let it get hot. It'll solidify. Everything is connected. And yeah, you can kind of see the red light poking through the holes there. This piece of black tape is actually the perfect size. You want a little more than an inch. And the problem is we got some exposed wires here. If you let the two wires touch, then this will stop working altogether. So I'm going to put this piece of black tape in between the two wires. Okay, watch carefully. I'm going to fold over a little bit and make sure that's all nice and neat. I'm doing this on the red wire because it has the least amount of exposed wire. So as long as we have the red wire completely encased, it's okay if we have a little bit of the black exposed. So after I pinch that down real good, make sure it's not going to move, then I'm going to take it and wrap it around the whole thing. Not super tight, because again, you don't want it to be too crazy there. But we do want these wires to get close to each other. Okay, so now we have this situation. Okay, and this is why we put the green thing on before. So I'm sliding the green one down. I'm going to tuck that tape inside of it, which can be a challenge if you didn't wrap it tight enough. So we're going to just slide it all the way down, just like that. Does that look good? Red light's still on, that means you're good. Okay, now we're going to use this thing called a heat gun. A heat gun is basically a hair dryer on steroids. Okay? And so we're going to turn this on and blow onto the green heat shrink. And you'll understand why we call it heat shrink tubing, because it'll shrink and become tight around this. And move your fingers away. Alright, here we go. I'm going to turn it and do the other side. Try not to heat up the 3D print to the point that it melts. Alright. Be careful because the tip of this is hot, so don't set it down where it's going to burn something. I put it down on the other blue pad next. So the next part is important. We have to protect our cable right here, because if as you're using it you keep wiggling it back and forth, you're going to end up snapping and breaking the wires down right here. And so we're going to do a trick, the same trick that they do to every cable. See this cable right here, how they have this shield right here? We're going to do that same type of a shield, but we're just going to make it out of hot glue. So you're just basically going to encase this whole thing all the way up about an inch and down around here to protect it from bending. And so you can see how I'm holding it. I'm holding the wire here, so it makes a nice gentle arc up and around and down. So I'm not holding it by the wire, I'm holding it by this, because you don't want to hold it by this and then heat this up and then have it just pull out everything. Okay, so now I'm going to add the hot glue. I'm going to completely cover the entire top. And then come all the way up about at least an inch. And just coat it in hot glue. The more hot glue you put on there, the longer it's going to take to solidify, so don't go too crazy. But there we go. Alright, so I'm going to take this, I'm going to hold it upside down so it can drizzle downward a little bit and create a little blob. So there you go. If you look at my other one, you can see the finished one right here. So same type of thing that we're doing. This one's still clear because it's still hot. So you know when it's cold when the glue is no longer clear. Alright? So it's still clear, so that's still hot. So it also can be runny, so keep it moving. But don't let it wiggle. Don't let it wiggle too much. I missed a spot. You can always add more if you need to. Okay. Alright, so we're doing that. And the other thing that you need to do is do the same thing to the wires on the other side. Spread them out so they're not touching each other, and do this. Okay, it makes it so these wires have the same protection. Don't coat the entire wire, leave this exposed so we can hook up our sensors to it, and then just coat it, about halfway up or a third of the way up with hot glue, and that gives it a nice protection so you can't bend it so much that it just snaps off. Okay? After the glue dries, plug it back in, make sure it still works. If something doesn't work, then we may have to tear it apart and try again.